Welcome to Olivia. Please don't forget to subscribe and support me, thank you. It was a cool autumn evening when Emily sat by her living room window, sipping a warm cup of chamomile tea. The orange glow of the sunset painted the sky, and for a moment, everything felt quiet, too quiet. She had always lived a simple life, working as a librarian in town, surrounded by books and stories that carried other people's secrets. But that night, her own story was about to begin, one she never imagined. Her phone buzzed. It was an unexpected message from her Aunt Rose. "Emily, are you home? We need to talk. It's important." Moments later, another message followed. This time from Aunt Claire. "Please don't tell anyone we're coming. Just keep the door open for us." Emily frowned. Both her aunts were strong, independent women who rarely asked for help. They were sisters, older than her late mother, and though they had always been protective of Emily, they had never come to her with something so mysterious. When the knock finally came, Emily's heart raced. She opened the door to find Rose and Claire standing there, their faces pale, their eyes filled with something Emily couldn't quite name, fear maybe, or regret. "Can we come in?" Rose whispered, glancing nervously at the street behind her. Emily nodded, stepping aside. Once inside, the two women sat at her dining table, whispering to each other before finally facing her. Claire reached across the table, taking Emily's hand. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "we've come to you because we don't know who else to trust." Emily's chest tightened. "What's wrong? Are you both okay?" Rose exhaled deeply, as though she had been carrying a heavy weight for years. "We need to tell you something. Something we've hidden from you and from almost everyone for decades." Emily leaned forward, her tea forgotten. "A secret?" "Yes," Claire replied, her voice breaking slightly. "A secret about love. About choices we made when we were young. And now, we need your help to face it." The room grew quiet, the ticking of the clock suddenly louder than usual. Emily's mind swirled with questions. Why now? Why her? And what could possibly be so important that two women, who had always seemed so strong, were suddenly trembling in her living room? Rose pulled a faded envelope from her purse and slid it across the table. Emily hesitated before opening it. Inside, she found an old photograph to young women standing by the lake she remembered visiting as a child. But there was also a man between them. Tall, handsome, with kind eyes that seemed to reach through the paper. "That man," Rose whispered, "changed everything between us. And now, after all these years, he's come back." Emily's breath caught. "Come back, you mean? He's alive. He's here." Claire nodded slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "Yes, and he's asking to see us again." Emily clutched the photograph, her heart thundering in her chest. She didn't understand the depth of what was unfolding, but she could feel it. The past was reaching into the present, and her aunts were caught in something bigger than she could yet imagine. "What do you want me to do?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Rose and Claire exchanged a long, heavy look before Rose finally answered. "We need you to meet him first. Alone, before we decide anything." Emily's eyes widened, her fingers tightening around the photograph. "Me? Why me?" "Because," Claire whispered, her voice almost breaking, "he's the reason our lives turned out the way they did. And before we face him, we need to know if we can trust what he says. You're the only one who can help us now." Emily sat frozen, her world tilting in ways she never expected. The photograph lay on the table between them, holding a story buried for decades. Her quiet evening had transformed into a storm of secrets, and she had no idea where it would lead. Her heart whispered one thing clearly, though, whatever this man's return meant, it would change all of their lives forever. And Emily wasn't sure she was ready. For the truth, Emily couldn't sleep that night. The photograph sat on her nightstand, its edges worn, the three faces frozen in time. Rose and Claire had left just before midnight, insisting she think it over before agreeing to meet the mysterious man from their past. But how could she think of anything else? Her aunts were the strongest people she knew, yet tonight, they had looked fragile, like their past still haunted them. And now Emily was being asked to step into that past, to meet a man who had shaped their lives in ways she didn't yet understand. By morning, she felt restless, her heart pounding as she replayed their words. She picked up her phone and sent a message to Claire. "Where am I supposed to meet him?" The reply came quickly. "At the old cafe by the river. Today, 5 p.m. We'll wait nearby." Emily stared at the message, her breath catching. It was happening. The cafe hadn't changed much since her childhood. The wooden chairs still creaked. The smell of freshly baked bread filled the air, and the big windows looked out over the slow-moving river. Emily arrived early, clutching her coat tighter around her. Every sound made her jump. The doorbell ringing, footsteps across the tiled floor, the murmur of strangers. And then she saw him. He was older now, with silver in his hair, but his presence filled the room the moment he walked in. His deep-set eyes scanned the cafe before landing on her. For a second, Emily felt as if the air had been knocked out of her. Those eyes. They were the same kind, searching eyes from the photograph. He walked over slowly, almost cautiously, and stopped at her table. "You must be Emily," he said, his voice low and steady. Emily nodded, unable to speak at first. "Yes, I am, and you must be." The man in the photograph. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. "My name is Daniel." They talked for a while. The conversation circling carefully at first about the cafe, about how small towns never seem to change. But soon, Daniel leaned closer, his tone more serious. "I suppose your aunts told you very little," he said, his hands folding tightly on the table. "They told me you were important to them," Emily replied softly, "and that you changed everything." Daniel's eyes darkened, as though 1,000 memories pressed against them. "We were young then, Rose, Claire, and I. We thought we had time to figure things out, but love doesn't always wait. Choices were made, promises were broken, and I left when I should have stayed." Emily's throat tightened. "You mean, you loved them both?" He looked down, his silence louder than any words. For a long moment, Emily just watched him, trying to understand. The weight of decades sat in his expression, in the way his shoulders seemed to carry both regret and longing. Finally, she whispered, "Why now? Why come back after all this time?" Daniel's gaze lifted to hers, his voice breaking slightly. "Because some loves don't fade. I need to know if what we once had can be healed or if it's too late." Before Emily could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. It was Rose. "Is he there? Are you okay?" Emily glanced at Daniel, her heart pounding. He sat across from her, waiting, his eyes filled with hope and sorrow all at once. She typed quickly, "Yes, I'm with him, but there's so much I don't understand." A reply came almost instantly, "Don't let him go. We're coming." Emily looked up, stunned. "They're on their way," she whispered. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, as though bracing himself for something long overdue. "Then the past is about to walk through that door." Emily's pulse quickened. She didn't know what would happen when her aunts arrived, but she could feel it. This was only the beginning of a storm that might shatter or mend everything they once held sacred. And as the doorbell of the cafe rang again, Emily turned, her breath caught in her throat. The cafe door swung open with a soft chime, and Emily's breath froze in her chest. Rose and Claire stepped inside, their eyes immediately finding Daniel at the corner table. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The clinking of dishes, the low hum of conversations around them, all of it faded into silence. Emily could feel the tension stretching between them like a fragile thread ready to snap. Rose was the first to move. She walked slowly, her chin lifted, her expression carefully guarded. Claire followed, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes shining with emotions she couldn't hide. Daniel stood as they approached. His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "Rose, Claire." Neither answered right away. Rose's eyes scanned his face, searching, questioning, almost disbelieving. Claire looked as if she might cry at any moment. Finally, Rose spoke, her voice sharp. "So, it's true. After all these years, you've come back." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Yes, I had to." Claire's voice trembled as she whispered, "Why now, Daniel? Why, after we built our lives without you?" He looked at them both, then at Emily, before answering, "Because I never stopped carrying you with me, both of you, and I can't live the rest of my life without facing what I left behind." Emily sat frozen, her hands pressed together under the table. She had never seen her aunts like this, so vulnerable, so raw. Rose's eyes narrowed. "You left us broken, Daniel. You think you can just walk back into our lives and expect forgiveness?" Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope for understanding." His voice cracked, and for the first time Emily saw the weight of regret in him, heavy and unshakable. Claire's tears finally fell. "We loved you, both of us, and you couldn't choose. That destroyed us." Emily's heart ached as the truth settled in. It wasn't just a story of lost love, it was a story of betrayal, of two sisters torn apart by the same man. Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small, folded letter, yellowed with age, and placed it gently on the table. "I wrote this years ago," he said softly. "I never sent it, but it holds the truth of what I felt, and why I left." The letter lay untouched, heavy with unspoken words. Rose stared at it but didn't reach for it. Claire's eyes flickered between the paper and Daniel's face. Torn between wanting answers and fearing them, Emily finally found her voice. "Why show us now?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked at her, his eyes filled with pain. "Because I couldn't carry it alone anymore. And because you deserve to know what really happened." The silence that followed was unbearable. Emily could feel the history pressing down on the small cafe, decades of love and loss spilling into this single moment. At last, Claire reached for the letter with trembling hands. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the faded ink. Rose leaned closer, her jaw tight. Emily watched their expressions shift, first shock, then sorrow, then something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. Finally, Claire set the letter down. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "So it's true. You loved us both, and you left because you couldn't bear to choose." Daniel's shoulders sagged, as though the truth had finally broken free. "Yes, and it was the greatest mistake of my life." Rose's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "Do you know what that did to us, Daniel? Do you know how many nights we spent resenting each other because of you?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I know, and I've lived every day regretting it." Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to reach out, to ease the storm around the table, but she knew this wasn't hers to mend. Just as Rose opened her mouth to speak again, the cafe door opened once more. A tall man entered, glancing around, his presence commanding. Rose and Claire both froze, their faces draining of color. Daniel's eyes widened. "It can't be," he whispered. Emily turned, her pulse racing. Who is this stranger? And why did her aunts look like they'd seen a ghost? The cafe seemed to shrink as the tall man stepped inside. His presence was undeniable. Broad shoulders, silver hair neatly combed back, eyes sharp yet softened by time. He scanned the room, and when his gaze fell upon their table, he froze. Rose's hand tightened around the edge of the table. Claire inhaled sharply, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Emily looked from her aunts to Daniel, then back to the stranger. "Who is he?" she whispered, though no one answered immediately. The man took a slow step forward. "Rose Claire." His voice was deep, steady, yet laced with something unspoken. Daniel's face paled. He muttered, under his breath, almost in disbelief, "Michael." Emily's head spun. "Michael? Who was Michael?" Rose finally found her voice, though it cracked when she spoke. "We thought we'd never see you again." Michael's eyes softened as he looked at both sisters. "I thought the same. Until now." His gaze shifted to Daniel, sharp as a blade. "And you? I never thought I'd find you here." Emily blinked, her mind racing. This wasn't just a love triangle. There was more, something deeper, something tangled in the very fabric of her family's past. Daniel straightened, his expression tense. "I didn't know you'd returned, Michael." Michael's jaw tightened. "And I didn't know you still lingered in their lives." Claire's voice shook as she finally spoke. "Stop, both of you. Please." She turned to Emily, her eyes full of sorrow. "Emily." Michael was Daniel's brother. The words hit like thunder. Emily's heart lurched, her hands trembling on the table. "His brother." Rose closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing for the storm. "Yes, years ago, the three of us, we weren't just caught in love with one man, we were caught between two brothers." Emily felt dizzy. It was too much, the secrets, the revelations piling one after another. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she whispered. Rose's eyes filled with tears she rarely allowed herself to show. "Because we wanted to protect you from the mess we made, from the pain we carried." Michael's gaze swept the table, lingering on each of them before settling back on Daniel. "You left them. You left all of us. I stayed, even when it tore me apart. And now, after decades, you return as if nothing happened." Daniel's voice broke, his calm cracking under the weight of guilt. "I didn't come back to erase the past, Michael. I came back because I can't live with the silence anymore." Emily's heart ached as she watched the two men, their faces, mirrors of pain, regret, and something unhealed. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about betrayal. About choices that had left scars across everyone at the table. Claire's hand trembled as she reached for Rose. "We can't do this again," she whispered. "Not after all these years." Rose nodded, though her eyes never left Daniel and Michael. "But maybe we have to. Maybe we'll never move forward until we face it." The silence grew heavier, thick enough to choke. Emily wanted to scream for them to speak, to tell her everything, but she knew the truth was spilling out in its own time. Finally, Michael's gaze shifted to Emily. "And who is she?" Rose's voice softened. "She's our niece, Margaret's daughter." Michael's expression faltered. "Margaret, gone." Claire nodded. her eyes lowering. Yes, years ago. For a moment, grief swept across Michael's features, raw and unguarded. He turned back to Daniel, his voice low but sharp. You missed everything. You missed her, you missed them, you missed life itself. And now you come back, expecting to mend what you shattered. Daniel didn't flinch. I don't expect anything. I only hope. Emily's heart raced as she watched the four of them, her two aunts, Daniel, and Michael, locked in a storm of old wounds and unspoken truths. She felt like an outsider, yet somehow she was in the center of it, holding the photograph, the letter, the weight of decades of secrets. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to push them further, Michael spoke words that silenced them all. I didn't just come back to see you, he said, his voice heavy. I came back because there's something you all need to know. Something I've kept hidden as long as Daniel has. Emily's breath caught. What is it? Michael's eyes darkened, and he looked directly at her. Emily, you're more tied to this story than you realize. Emily's heart pounded so hard she thought the whole cafe might hear it. Michael's eyes were fixed on her, steady but sorrowful, while Daniel shifted uneasily in his chair. Rose and Claire both seemed to stop breathing. Emily's voice cracked as she whispered, What do you mean? How am I tied to all of this? Michael exhaled slowly, his shoulders heavy with the weight of years. Because, Emily, you weren't only your mother's child, you were part of this story long before you were born. Emily froze. I don't understand. Rose reached across the table, her hand trembling as it covered Emily's. Emily, before your mother married, before you were even thought of, she loved someone. She loved one of them. Her voice broke as she looked at Daniel and Michael. But she never told you? Emily's breath caught, her mind spinning. You mean, one of them is my father? Claire's tears fell freely now. Yes, sweetheart. Margaret, your mother was in love with one of these brothers. She kept it hidden to protect you. To protect all of us. The cafe seemed to tilt. Emily gripped the edge of the table, her world unraveling piece by piece. But who? Daniel's eyes closed, as though he already knew the answer would destroy him. Michael's jaw clenched. And then, after a long silence, Michael spoke quietly. It was me. Rose gasped softly. Claire covered her mouth with her hand. Daniel's eyes widened, pain flashing across his face. Michael's voice was low, steady, but filled with regret. Your mother and I, we loved each other in secret. But when everything between Rose, Claire, and Daniel fell apart, Margaret chose silence. She raised you alone, and I let her be because I thought it was the only way to keep peace. His eyes glistened. I've lived all these years carrying that truth. Emily's world shattered and rebuilt itself in a heartbeat. The man standing before her, the stranger who had just walked through the cafe door, was not just part of her aunt's tangled story. He was her father. Tears stung her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't she? Michael's face broke, raw with emotion. Because she wanted you to have a simple life, not weighed down by our mistakes, by the mess of love and betrayal we created. She wanted you free of it. Daniel sat in silence, his eyes lowered, his body rigid. Rose and Claire were both weeping quietly. The years of secrets finally too heavy to bear. Emily shook her head, her voice trembling. You all kept this from me, and now you expect me to just understand. Rose's voice cracked. We never wanted you to carry our pain, but the truth has a way of finding its way to light. For a long time, none of them spoke. The letter still lay on the table, the photograph still between them. But everything had changed. Emily looked at Michael, the father she never knew she had. His eyes were filled with sorrow, but also with something undeniable. Love. Love he had carried silently for decades. Finally, she whispered, I don't know if I can forgive any of you right now, but I know I can't walk away either, because this is my story too. Michael nodded, tears slipping down his weathered face. I'll wait, Emily, as long as it takes. I don't want to lose you the way I lost your mother. Daniel rose quietly from his chair, his voice low and broken. Then my place isn't here anymore. I was the one who left first, and I won't stand in the way again. Rose reached out, her voice pained. Daniel, but he shook his head. It's too late for me, but maybe not for you all. And with that, he walked out of the cafe, leaving the bell above the door ringing softly in his wake. Emily sat in stunned silence, surrounded by her aunts and the man who had just revealed he was her father. Her heart was torn open, aching with grief, anger, and a strange flicker of hope she didn't dare trust. The cafe was quiet again, but everything inside her had changed forever. Her life, once so simple, had become a story of hidden love, regret, and the possibility of healing. And though she didn't yet know how the pieces would fit, Emily knew one thing for certain. The past was no longer buried, and the future would never be the same. The end.